Okay. So we're on class 7. Did you all get your notes? I did send them. You didn't get them, Tracy?
Oh,
I was looking. I don't think I got them,
I sent
but
them.
I will double check.
I think I sent them actually on Saturday.
Oh, okay.
go back real quick, maybe and see. Yeah, it was on the 30th. Let me just make sure. Yep, I see Tracy's name.
I was just determined to get it done so that I could go on to other things.
I got it.
Okay.
Okay, good enough. All right, well, let's share the screen for the PowerPoint and we will begin. This class is going to be a little bit shorter, which is just fine because we're starting so much later. So go ahead to that first screen.
Okay, can you see the intro?
Yes, but go ahead to
Okay.
the next one. Okay, so every week we review something that we talked about. And so the review question is, what are some of the ways that we can influence the government? So we talked about understanding our roots. What did that have to do with? Anybody?
Well, we can influence them through communication. Is that what you're talking about? I'm sorry.
Well, understanding our roots means more like what was done in the past. What was the original intent? What kind of laws have been passed that were good, or what was the, where did we come from? And so we can go ahead, Rima.
Constitution was set up to protect we the people from the government, to make sure that all powers not specifically reserved to the government were retained by the states specifically and by the people generally.
Right. So actively engage in society for good. How does that influence government? What do you think? Anybody?
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties with Tracy, so if somebody else might want to take that.
Okay, so if you are doing good things for the society, is that going to be a positive in relationship to the people who are being influenced by your good deeds or your good actions? It possibly might have a positive effect on their perception of people in general and the government in particular. It's possible that that might make a difference. So actively represent the Republic to everyone as, what did I have there?
Unless it's your kid, in which case it doesn't make any difference what you do.
I dropped off the rest of that line. It says, actively represent the Republic to everyone as one of the trustees of the Republic. So how do you represent the Republic to everyone as a representative of the Republic?
Wouldn't it be like following the Constitution and keeping the laws that or the privileges that you were given to work with or uphold? I mean, as far as a representative, they should do what the people have elected them to do, and provided, the I'm a loss for words right now. The guidelines that they need to follow.
Right. And I mean, the thing is that every single one of us is part of the republic. And so every single one of us ought to be paying attention to how that republic is working, right?
Mhm.
Okay, next slide. And so here's some more. It says wisely choose and support those who will support and represent the republic in government positions. I mean, I'm guilty my own self in the past of thinking, well, I'm just going to pick the lesser of two evils. You know, I mean,
Right.
who
Not
You
really
say
doing.
you're-
No, go ahead, Rima.
You say you're guilty of that. The other choice, if you believe that there are two evils, which is very commonly the case, is to not vote. Because
And-
if you haven't been able to influence the electoral process sufficiently to get somebody that you think is not an evil, then either you vote for the lesser of two evils, or you abstain and give your vote away in a very irresponsible fashion,
right,
which I have done on many occasions because I couldn't stomach voting for either one because lesser wasn't lesser enough.
exactly. Well, and so what this is a lesson in the fact that we could have been involved sooner in the process and possibly have influenced somebody else who would have been better. And that's all, you know, like supposition, but you know, instead of just voting, being actively involved in the whole entire choosing of people who are going to be running for office, the whole process, not just in voting, would be part of that. What are some of the principles for measuring a candidate? What do you think? Some other people. How do we decide who's a good candidate? Well, let's go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Iva.
We have to be actively engaged and I guess meet them.
Okay, that would be one thing. What have we been doing for the last year with candidates? Have we been just listening to them and letting them, you know, slide by, or what else have we been doing with them?
Asking them questions.
It made them really uncomfortable. We've been asking if they know anything about the Constitution, right?
Right.
And what they would do. So remember, I don't know who was there, but remember we were at that one restaurant where the person who's running for Attorney General was speaking, and we asked her what she was going to do about child trafficking, and she really didn't have a very good answer. Were any of you guys there that night?
Not I.
I can't even remember her name, but
Oh, that what was her name? Lucy or Lucia? Are you, is that
Something.
the one you're talking about? The one that's the
Yes.
attorney that was running for wanting to do the attorney general? Yeah, wasn't it like Lucy something? I'd have to go back or put her name in to find her, but yeah, I was not happy with any of her answers that she gave us on that night. I mean, she might be a good lawyer and she might, you know a lot about certain things, but as far as the Constitution and stuff, I don't think she had what it takes to be an AG at all.
well, and here's the interesting thing. It's only been in this last year for me
Mhm.
that I've attended any kind of a meeting where those people were speaking before a primary. You know, I never had, never. And so this last year, with attending these meetings, it's been an instructive experience in what these people do and do not know about everything.
Well, I think too, part of it is because of the fact that most of them probably didn't get the Constitution, or a very, very small part of it. So they don't understand what the Constitution is based on. And then if they have no biblical references, or they, don't understand that it came from that, then there's no way that they're going to understand what common law is and what it relates to.
Right. Okay, so always be ready to educate on the difference between a republic and a democracy. Who would like to share what that is? The difference between a republic and a democracy.
Rima is the best one to respond to that one.
Well,
She has a-
before I respond to that, I want to say that to the prior issue, one of the really important things to do is to go online and look up where their campaign money has come from.
Nice.
Because it doesn't matter whether they can do a Twinkle Toes performance at a public event. Who's
True.
buying them? Who owns them? I want to know
Exactly.
whose man or woman you are, and then we'll
Mhm.
see whether I vote for you. So that to me
Very
is
good
critically
point.
important.
Very good point. Absolutely. Okay, so Rima, give us your republic versus democracy.
Okay, a republic is a governmental form in which elected representatives make decisions for the people. A democracy is a form of government in which the people make decisions on all of the issues themselves. So nobody has time to farm or go to work or carry out any other activity because they're always voting.
Yes, and the majority in a democracy, the majority rules. Whether the majority is good or not so good or whatever, it makes no difference. The majority rules in the democracy. Okay, next slide. All right, we referenced giants in the land. What are some of the giants, and what are we called to do with those giants? Do you remember the story of the giants?
Yeah, I just can't remember where they were. Were they at what town or city were they in that they went to go fight them, and they
No, this
were
was before fighting. The
when they
people. Oh, the people had come out of Egypt, and God was sending them into the land of Canaan, which is now Israel, and they went to spy it out, 12 of them. And 10 of them came back, and then it's really good land, but there's giants there. And 2 of them came back and said, yeah, there's giants, but we can go in and take them. We can do it, especially with God's help. And so we were talking about the fact that this is a mental attitude toward those giants. And so what are some of the giants that we're facing, and what are we called to do about those giants?
Oh,
now we're
ahead,
talking
Rima.
about our time.
Yes, in our time.
Well, the government,
Okay, what about it?
well, that they would like to take over and run us like a bunch of puppets, but that's not the way it works in America. It shouldn't be in any place in the world, for that matter.
Okay, what are some other giants that we face?
We also discussed
Karma.
the, what?
Yeah.
Did you say karma?
No, I said big pharma,
Oh,
big telecom, big agra, the fossil fuel, all the globalist industrial forces, which are pretty big.
Right, what were you going to say, Heidi?
that we were discussing how the judicial branch had taken too much power it was not originally intended to have.
Right, right. And so there's all these issues, and now we have this World Health Organization thing going on. And we were just, Rose and I were just on Liberty Warrior Nation before we came on here, which is why the class is later. And he was saying that Bill Gates was issuing something today about the fact that, you know, what's coming next is way worse than what we've seen so far. And that we need to all be, we need worldwide surveillance so that, you know, they'll do a better job. Well, that's part of this WHO thing that we're talking about. And Bill Gates is just, you know, he wants to be God, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, he thinks he is, but he's not.
Speaking of which, may I, with your permission, put a link on asking everybody to take action and spread the link opposing the international health regulation amendments, which will basically give away all governance in worldwide to WHO, which is not a good thing.
No, it's not. And we were telling them through Liberty Warrior Nation tonight earlier about that, and telling them to you know, get a hold of people as well. And we offered them your link, so we'll pass that on to them. And so there's all these things, but and so we can either be overcome by the problems, or we can be the ones who overcome the problems. It's a choice. And it's really a mental choice at this point, where we decide, you know, Rima's thing is don't you dare, and you know, not functioning from fear. We have a lot of things that need to be fixed. We have a lot of giants, but that does not mean that we just throw up our hands and go, oh, well, we're, you know, we can't do anything. All right. So the next question is, why did we say that it was good that Article 5 amendment process was lengthy? If you remember, Article 5 in the US Constitution is about how to amend the Constitution. And it's a long drawn out process that takes years. It doesn't happen in 6 months. It takes years. So why is that a good thing, that it takes years?
Why can I not find it?
Any ideas?
Why am I not able to find you all?
Find us.
Yes, my Zoom link to you all has disappeared. Oh, there it is. Okay, sorry.
So why would that be a good thing, that it takes a long time? Go ahead, Rima.
We're talking about the foundational document, the implications of which are massive, and short-term interests and fashions of thought should not be allowed to impact a foundational document that generations will be impacted by. So it needs to take a long time. It needs to be a slow process.
Right, because what I said last week was there's been over 100 proposed amendments to the United States Constitution, but there are only 27 of them in place. Okay, and the reason there's only 27 is because in the end, people decided that the others were just a really bad idea. The other part of it is that you know, sometimes an amendment amended an amendment. and, you know, canceled out something that people thought was a great idea, and then they decided later that it was not. Okay, so, all right, let's go on. I was going to skip the last two articles, and then I decided, no, I'm not going to do that, because then we wouldn't be completing the United States Constitution. So we'll start next week on the Bills of Rights, the first 10 amendments, but and we're just going to touch on it at the end today. But Article 6 says that all debts contracted and engagements entered into with this Constitution shall be valid against the United States under this Constitution as it was under the Confederation. So the bullet says that it explains it, that all debts will be binding just as they were under the Articles of Confederation. Does everybody know what the Articles of Confederation were?
No, but this sounds like that any debt that we have contracted, maybe with another state is binding us to fulfill the obligation no matter what.
Right, so the Articles of Confederation were established right after the Revolutionary War, and they were, so they were the first government right after the Revolutionary War, and they didn't work very well. And so it was at some point in that process with the Articles of Confederation that they decided that they really didn't want this Articles of Confederation. They wanted a real constitution, and they convened the Constitutional Convention at that point. So the Articles of Confederation were what was in place between the end of the Revolutionary War and when the US Constitution was ratified. Okay, and so the debt that had resulted from the Revolutionary War is what they're talking about here. Okay, so go on to the next one. All right. Says this Constitution, the laws of the United States shall be in pursuance thereof, and all the trust treaties made or which will be made under the authority of the United States shall be by the supreme law of the land, and the judges of every state shall be thereby bound. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state contrary notwithstanding. So what this is saying is, this Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and as well as the laws of the United States, which will be made that will conform to the Constitution. All right. So that's the first part. So go on to the next page.
Why were you even considering leaving that out?
Well, it crossed my mind, Heidi, and then I changed my mind.
We use that.
All right, so then the next part of this is saying
Wait,
that,
can you go back? Can you go back for a moment, Deborah?
yes,
This Constitution is the supreme law of the land,
right,
as well as the laws of the United States, which are made that conform to the Constitution. So does that mean, it says the laws of the United States, does that mean the laws that Congress passes or the laws that the states pass, or both?
it means the laws that the Congress passes. That's what they're referring to here. All right, and so just hang on, because we're going to get to something else here about that. So so go on to the next slide here. It's a good question. So then part of this thing is, so all treaties made by the authority of the United States, so all those treaties made by the authority of the United States, past and in the future, will be honored, is what they're saying. Okay, now we all know that that was not carried out the way it was intended to be, because most of the Native American tribes, one after the other, experienced treaties that were then broken on a regular basis.
Very much so.
So, okay, but that's what's in the Constitution. The next point is that the judges in every state will be bound by the United States Constitution and the laws of Congress. That's what it's saying here in this article. All right. Then it's saying nothing in state law or state constitution, which is different, will stand against them. So what this is saying is that if a state passes a law that contradicts or doesn't jive with the United States Constitution, that state law is unconstitutional and is therefore voided. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah. So can we go back through the state laws and find out how many are unconstitutional?
Well, and it's interesting because at different points, there have been state laws that were not in conformance with the United States Constitution, and they have eventually been challenged in court and have been quite frequently reversed. And it's based on this Article 6. Okay, so do you recall, Rose, I don't even know if you were present that day when we were sitting at my dining room table and we were talking about supremacy law?
I was there. Yeah, I was there.
Okay.
No, we are talking like almost a year ago.
Yeah. Well-
And we've moved on from supremacy
Yes.
quite a while ago.
Right, but so what David had said to me at that point was that the supremacy part of this Article 6 did not say that the United States Constitution was supreme over the state constitutions, like the state constitutions couldn't do anything on their own. It's just that the state constitutions and the state laws cannot be in opposition to the United States Constitution. Do you hear the difference there?
That's a fine distinction.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is. What we find is that the United States Constitution is extremely general, whereas the state constitutions are far more specific about things. It's just that those specificities in the state constitution cannot be in opposition to the United States Constitution. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. And then the last one. All right, so go on to the next slide. And this is still Article 6. The senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both in the United States and the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support the Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to an office or public trust under the United States. So go on to the next slide.
So wait.
Yes.
So how is it that anybody is sworn in with the Bible or Koran or the
Hang on.
Bhagavad Gita or whatever you want?
Hang on. So
How's
go
that
on,
happen?
go on to the next slide. So what this is saying is two things. The states, the senators and representatives from all these different departments and executive and judicial will be bound by an oath or an affirmation. But they cannot be, how do I want to say it? You can't force somebody to fit into your mold of, you have to be this sort of a Christian or this sort of a Muslim or this sort of anything as a qualification to be a senator or a representative or a judge or anybody else. You can't say that that's a qualification for being in that office. Okay? Now, they can choose,
I'm listening.
they can choose the document upon which they swear. Okay? So if they were Muslim, they would not be swearing on a Bible. They would probably be swearing on the Quran. Hoffman in Arizona. I'm not even kidding about this.
Oh yeah, this is good.
Kathy Hoffman, who's the superintendent of schools for the state, took her oath on a Dr. Seuss book.
Yeah,
I'm telling
seriously.
you the truth.
She raised her hand and took her oath over a Dr. Seuss book.
Yep.
If that's not the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard. Yeah.
You got me. You got me.
So, do you see the two parts? Everybody will take an oath or an affirmation to support the Constitution, but there is not a religious test in order to qualify to have one of those jobs.
Okay.
All right? Are we good? Okay, so go on to number 7. We're now at Article 7, which talks about the ratification of the Constitution. That's what this one is about. So it says the ratification of the Convention of 9 states shall be sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution between the states, so ratifying the same. So out of the 13 states, 9 of them had to, 9 legislatures of those states had to approve this Constitution before it would be ratified. Okay? Any question about that? All right, so now there's an interesting interlude here. Go on to the next slide. Because I read this and I'm like, what? What this is corrections to the document. And they're part of the Constitution. The editing corrections are part of the Constitution. It's fascinating to me that they would have done this. But what happened was, as the different states looked over the document, they said, we want this added or that added, the same way that on Sunday nights we go through the different notices and we're like, oh, I don't like that word that way, I wanted a different word. And so this was added to the Constitution because this was part of the discussion in ratifying the Constitution. So here we go. This is what it says. The word "the" being interlined between the 7th and 8th lines of the first page, the word 30 being partly written on an erasure in the erasure. I'm sorry, on the 15th line of the first page, the word is tried, being interlined between the 32nd and the 33rd lines of the first page, and the word "the" being interlined between the 43rd and the 44th lines of the second page. And here we have editing corrections for the Constitution. Interesting.
This is the colonial version of Grammarly.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Knowing this, it must be why you're not offended by some of the petty corrections that are suggested.
You know what? Yes, it's fine. It's fine. Okay, so go on to the next slide. Now, William Jackson is the secretary, and he is attesting that this was done in convention by the unanimous consent of, by the unanimous consent of the states present, the 17th day of September and the year of our Lord 1787, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 12th in witness thereof, we have hereunto subscribed our names. Oh my goodness. This is done in convention by unanimous consent of the states who were present on September 17th, 1787, which was the 12th year of independence of the United States of America. That's what that means. Okay, and then, because I just wanted to do it, I, on the next 2 or 3 slides, I included all, and you have these in your notes, all of the names of all the people who signed the document. So let's look at them, because it's interesting how they signed it. So you'll see that George, as in Washington, put a G-O as a, and then a dot in Washington. And president and deputy from Virginia. It's just interesting. That's all. There's nothing important to it other than it's just interesting how they sign their names. Okay. In Delaware, the guy's name is probably George, but he put GEO instead. Down in Delaware still, I know that this guy is Jacob, but he put Jaco and Broom. Okay, keep going, next page. Okay, so then we have William Blount, Richard Dobbs Spate, Hugh, which that's his name, Hugh, H-U, Williamson. Just interesting. That's all. Nothing important here other than just interesting. In Georgia, ABR is undoubtedly Abraham Baldwin, but that's how he signed it. Go on to the next page. And this is the end of them. I think this is the end of them. Nope, it's not. And so we have William Samuel Johnson, who abbreviated his first and second name. We have William Livingston. I know that's William, but he just put Will. It's just interesting. Go on to the last one. And here's Ben Franklin. He's just B. Robert Morris. I don't know why they did these abbreviations this way. And this guy, the last guy, that's his real name, Gov Morris. That's his real name. Go ahead, Rima.
I would point out that this was an era in which Thomas Jefferson wrote, "I have nothing but contempt for any man who can only spell a word one way." The rules of orthography were not fixed. People basically just made up whatever they wanted.
Well, there you go.
And their names could be anything.
Well, exactly.
Fluidly. We have fluid genders. They had fluid words.
There we go. All right, next slide. All right, now we're going to just touch on the Bill of Rights for, well, quite a bit actually, but we're not getting into the Bill of Rights yet. We're just going to, introduce. So the purpose of government is to secure inalienable rights, inalienable right, which is the function of the Bill of Rights. What do you think about that statement?
Is that a direct quote?
It is, but I don't, I think it's from somebody who's current, not somebody who's old.
Thought we weren't allowed to say such things.
So, inalienable right, which is the function of the Bill of Rights. So it's interesting. So could somebody read this John Dickinson, signer of the Constitution quote? Because this is a quote.
I can.
Okay, go ahead.
John Dickinson, signer of the Constitution. Human governments could not give the rights essential to happiness. We claim them from a higher source, from the King of Kings and the Lord of all the earth. They are not annexed to us by parchments and seals. They are created in us by the decrees of providence, which establish the laws of our nature. They are born with us, exist with us, and cannot be taken from us by any human power without taking our lives.
Okay. This is a fairly strong statement, isn't it? Do you think he really believed that?
I'm sure he did.
It would appear that he did. All right, let's look at some other guys. So Alexander Hamilton, signer of the Constitution and not co-author of the Federalist Papers. Somebody read his quote.
Inalienable rights are not to be rummaged for among old parchments or musty records. They are written as with a sunbeam in the whole volume of human nature by the hand of the divinity itself, and can never be erased or obscured by mortal power.
That's Alexander Hamilton, made famous by the Hamilton opera. A musical. All right, somebody else. Samuel Adams, signer of the Declarations. Could somebody read that one?
Imprinted by the finger of God on the heart of man.
That's what he's saying inalienable rights are. Imprinted by the finger of God on the heart of man. All right, one more page. John Adams, signer of the Declaration. He says antecedent to all earthly government, that means before all earthly government, rights that cannot be repealed or restrained by human law, rights derived from the great legislator of the universe. These were the thinking of the inalienable rights that were the cause, the thought behind, the impetus of the Bill of Rights, the next 10 amendments to, or the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. These people felt strongly that they had been given inalienable, God-given rights that no king was going to be taking away. Okay. They were in them and nobody could take them. So a question is, for the Bill of Rights, they're the first 10 amendments. In your own words, what is a right?
something that is given to you freely, something that cannot be taken away. It's your right. Those would be my top two.
Okay, others?
Right to be, human, period. You were born and you have your rights automatically.
Okay. Anybody else?
Something that's yours and they can't take it unless they kill you.
Well, and that's basically what all those guys were saying, isn't it? It's in you and it cannot be removed without you dying. So they really meant that very seriously. All right, so let's look at the next slide. And this is the quote when you do the Bill of Rights, when you get into the Bill of Rights, this is a quote that's just from Ballotpedia, which I thought was quite good. It says the Bill of Rights of the United States Constitution includes the first 10 amendments, which set aside a list of rights which the federal government cannot infringe upon. That means they can't meddle with them.
Like, for instance, the First Amendment, which of
Well,
course
there
they
you
would
go.
never impinge upon. Thank
All right.
goodness.
It consists of a preamble and 10 amendments. And yes, go
It
ahead.
reads federal government, and I'm sure there's something which would balance this with state government.
What are you asking, Hattie? I'm not positive what you're saying.
So it reads, these are things the federal government cannot infringe upon, rather than neither federal nor state governments could infringe upon. However, I'm sure that there's something somewhere that would serve to balance the same of state governments could not
Well,
infringe upon
and
either.
so what you see in every single solitary state constitution, all 50, is within the first or second article of the Constitution is the Bill or Declaration of Rights. Okay, every single one of them. Now, they don't necessarily read exactly the same as the United States Constitution reads, but it's more like they go into more detail, the same as the state constitutions go into more detail in lots of ways than the US Constitution. Lots more detail in the states than in the federal.
But they're infringing upon that as we speak.
Well, absolutely, they are. But that's because people haven't paid attention to what were the actual rights. Yeah, they were convinced, they were lied to that an emergency order, because there was a fake COVID thing, was a reason to infringe on your rights.
Well, now they have a special committee that's going to infringe on our rights even more, the First Amendment.
Well, they're going to try. They're going to try. You know, they will. All right, let's go on to the next slide. By the way, hi, Jody. It's good to have you in here. All right, so now the preamble of the Bill of Rights, text of the preamble. All right, so it says Congress of the United States begun and held at the city of New York on Wednesday, the 4th of March, 1789, which means March 4th, 1789. The conventions of a number of the states, listen to what it says, having at the time of their adopting the Constitution expressed a desire in order to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its powers, that further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added. And as extending the ground of public confidence in the government will best ensure the beneficent ends of its institution. So next slide. So at the several state constitutions, the people express the need for further declarations and restrictions on the Constitution to prevent misinterpretation or abuse of the Constitution's powers. Putting these in place would increase the public confidence in the government and ensure beneficial results. That's what that says in that preamble. That's why it was written, why these bills of rights were written. So they met again, okay, to do this. So go on to the next slide. So here is what it says. Resolved by, so this is now the people in the Senate and the House of Representatives in the Congress. Resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, 2/3 of both houses concurring. Remember that in Article 5, there was the process of how to do amendments. Now they're doing it. And so proposed, so 2/3 of both houses concurring that the following articles be proposed to the legislatures of the several states as amendments to the Constitution of the United States, all or any of which articles, when ratified by 3/4, that's part of Article 5 of the said legislatures, shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of the said Constitution. Okay, go to the next slide. So they were following the amendment procedure in Article 5. 2/3 of both houses agreed that the amendments, the Bill of Rights, need to be proposed. And so they put them together, and then they sent them out to the states. Again, same as with the Constitution. Any of the articles approved would be by a 4/5 vote, a 3/4 vote, which is in Article 5 from the state legislatures. And if enough of them voted 9, then those amendments that they approved would become part of the actual Constitution. That was the process. And that's the process for every amendment.
When you think about it, this is really pretty cool because they went through all the trouble and it was hard for them to get together and they didn't have internet and telephones and faxes and so on. And they had to travel with great difficulty. So they got together, they came up with something, they took it back, and then they said, not sure this is protective enough. Let's go back and do more. And they did. And that's a level of really impressive dedication.
Yes, yeah, it is. And these people, they met, they did the Constitution Convention, it went out to the states, came back, approved, then they met, did the amendments, went out to the states, came back, and were approved and became part of the Constitution. And that's how it works. That's how it's supposed to work. Right? Okay, so let's go to this last slide. I believe it's the last one. Yes. So articles in addition to an amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America proposed by Congress, ratified by the legislatures of the several states pursuant to the 5th article of the original Constitution. That's the last part of the preamble. Okay, And so it's saying the articles, those 10 amendments have been approved. They're part of the Constitution, so declared. So the last comment here is government has forgotten there is a higher power than itself. What do you think that means?
They forgot about the people.
God
Okay,
and God.
and God, they forgot about anything except themselves because they think they are the higher power at this point. They do. So this is the intro into the Bill of Rights, which we will then attack next week. And it'll probably take a couple of weeks to get through all 10 of those. I'm not sure at this point. But anyway, how are we doing so far? Is everybody okay with what we're doing and how we're doing it? Any comments or anything?
No, I think it's going well. I mean, after the day today, I thought maybe this one was going to be so long that we were going to be here for hours, but I'm
No,
kind of like that it was a little bit shorter tonight.
right. Yeah,
But overall, I think that it's going well.
okay.
Yeah, I do too. Sorry I was late though.
Oh, no, that's fine.
I was too, Jody. I wonder why there's no homework. So
I
in
think
my mind, I know I really need to read it, verbatim from the actual text.
Right, right. Well, and so, but what we've learned is that, and we will look at the Arizona Constitution after we're done with the Bills of Rights, if you guys want to keep going, which I would suggest that we do, because you'll see immediately what I'm saying is the truth, that the US Constitution is general, whereas the state constitution is far more specific about many things. It's far more comprehensive.
I'd like to continue. I think this is giving me a lot of information that's very helpful. So I'm good with that.
Yeah,
good.
that's great too. I
Good.
like the idea.
Okay, good, excellent. Well, then we shall continue next week with the beginning of the Bills of Rights. So,
That's
and
great.
it's been a really long day. So if everybody's okay, we're just going to end here, and we'll start there next week.
Thank you.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you,
Thank you so
girls.
much.
Thank you.
You are quite welcome.
Thank you. Good night,
Bye.
all you
Good
ladies.
Good night.
night,
night,
guys.
Good night.